we're hearing this rhetoric of, well, it's because Iran is funding Hamas, or Hamas, or Iran trained Hamas, or whatever their reasoning is for this. If you're going to use that as reasoning, then you would have to be angry at the United States for Al-Qaeda, for example, and even for the moderate
ISIS.
rebels that ISIS. So, I mean, we were training these guys in the Afghanistan war the first time around in the 80s when they were Mujahideen, and we were arming them, we were training them. CIA was on the ground arming and training these guys. I mean, so then aren't we culpable for creating Al-Qaeda, creating ISIS? Then would that justify all of these other nations in the world saying, you know what, if we're going to defeat the war on terror, then we need to go after the United States because they're the ones who were training these guys. They were the ones who were funding these guys. So let's go after the U.S. I mean, the hypocrisy on all of this.
You're absolutely right. I mean, if you just look at what happened in Syria, I mean, that's exactly what happened in Syria, is that we trained the quote-unquote moderate rebels to try and topple Assad. We lied about the sarin gas attacks by the Assad regime against his people. I mean, the track record here, if you want to talk about sponsorship of terrorism in the Middle East, there is no nation on earth that has been more guilty of that than the American empire and the CIA. That's a fact. That's a fact. So if people are going to point the finger at Iran and say, yeah, World War III is totally feasible, let's just go for it. Well, how about we look in the mirror for 1 second? Can we do that? Can we reflect on any of the mistakes that we've made? I mean, definitional blowback defined by the CIA, demonstrated and pointed out by Ron Paul over 20 years ago. We continue to ignore his warnings. It drives me up the wall. And now, because, and let me also say, what happened to Israel is absolutely tragic. It's horrible.
Right.
But the lessons of the war on terror apply to them as well. If they go into Gaza and they flatten it and they create all of these innocent lives that are lost for no good reason, just because they have to get retribution, they have to satiate their bloodlust. Well, what does that mean? It means that all of their neighboring nations, which obviously are going to align themselves with their Islamic brethren, that increases the likelihood of a wide, multi-front regional war that will absolutely drag the United States and ultimately NATO, not to mention Russia. China moves on Taiwan. I mean, all of the dominoes are lined up. We have to stop sleepwalking our way into World War. It's insane.
Yeah, and I wonder what Israel's actual end game is on this. You know, like what? So the thinking is we have to eradicate Hamas. We have to stop. Because they want to, they're saying they want to eliminate all Jews. Like, that is what they want to do. Even though we've got Jimmy Carter saying that's not true. I met with them, and they were willing to accept a two-state solution. I mean, and you don't have to believe them. I think it's fair enough to say, yeah, okay, they're going to say that, but they don't really actually mean it. But neither did Netanyahu all of these years when he was like, yeah, two-state solution, two-state solution. Ever since he got on board after Rabin was assassinated in Israel, which a lot of people point the finger at Netanyahu and say, Netanyahu, before Rabin was assassinated, he was going around with he did a demonstration with a coffin for Rabin and a noose for Rabin. I mean, a lot of people point at Netanyahu and say, you actually were the guy that was inciting violence against the prime minister who met with Arafat and did the Oslo Accords. And then he ended up assassinated by a far-right Israeli extremist who was angry about the Oslo Accords. And then Netanyahu ends up winning the election to become prime minister because there was an attack that Hamas did on Israel, and it ended up fueling this, oh no, we've got to stop the terror, we have to stop the terror. And then you end up with this really hardliner right-winger Netanyahu who has absolutely no intention, and he's made that very, very clear numerous times that, yeah, we'll say that we're negotiating for a two-state solution, but he's used this endless negotiation for as an excuse. It's, we're negotiating, we're still, maybe, but they just have to stop being violent to go and continue building illegal settlements, to continue encroaching on what would be the state of Palestine and taking all that land, effectively rendering it, I think, almost impossible now at this point to actually implement a two-state solution. I'm not even sure if that's even a possibility at all at this point.
I'm not either.
Yeah, I actually want to play this clip because a lot of people are saying, and then I want to get into what you think the solution should be, as we kind of toss around some ideas of what do you do about Hamas? What do you do then about Palestine? Should they go into a two-state solution? You've got leaders right now, Biden saying, we need to first get rid of Hamas and then we'll deal with the two-state solution. You've got Turkey saying, Erdogan saying, I know, he's friendly with Hamas. And that's another thing. Turkey, which is a NATO ally, Erdogan is friendly with Hamas. And the leaders, many of them were actually in Turkey on October 7th. And then he was like, you guys got to get out of here because I don't want, if they're going to go after you, and if they're going to do strikes, he's not wanting it on Turkish land. He's not wanting any to get involved. But I mean, if you're going to talk about the people that actually support Hamas, it's Turkey and Qatar, right? And maybe Iran as well. But you still would have to go after Turkey. You'd have to go after Qatar. You'd have to hold them accountable for their friendship. Or Turkey will not designate, for example, Hamas a terrorist organization. But Turkey is, what do you do about Turkey? They're a NATO ally. We're not going to actually go and ruffle feathers and posture against Turkey. I mean, that's not realistic. But Turkey, Erdogan is saying, I know these guys. Let me kind of facilitate maybe a negotiation between Israel and Hamas and do some sort of solution, a two-state solution. You wanted to say something? Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to say, it was Colonel Douglas McGregor on with Tucker Carlson a day or two ago, and he was saying, Turkey will ultimately align themselves with Iran if it comes down to it. And if they do that, they have the capacity to spin up millions of troops within a few weeks. Yeah. So we're not talking about, this is the mistake that people are making. They're thinking that this is still the dominant, NATO/United States hegemon. And we're just going to stampede in there and we're going to run over Hamas like we did Saddam Hussein in Iraq or the Taliban in Afghanistan. Which, by the way, we didn't really run over the people in Afghanistan either. So this perception that we can just continue to flex on the world and that they're going to put up with it eternally is wrong. I mean, It is absolutely wrong. They've already seen it. We are largely a toothless tiger at this point. And if we're going to try and fund Ukraine and its defense into infinity against Russia, as well as this multi-front war to defend Israel, we're not going to be able to do it. I honestly think that we will lose that war, and I just don't know what people are looking at.
Well, and to kind of go back to my first point of what is Israel's plan here, because so if you go after Hamas and you say Hamas is the danger, they want to get rid of all the Jews, so it's an existential crisis for us. Okay, so let's take that and let's just agree with it at face value just for a minute and go down this logic. So you take out Hamas, you deal with the Palestinians. I don't know exactly what your plan is at that point with the entire population of the Palestinian people. Let's say the plan then is to move them. I see this all the time, people talking about move them to the Sinai Peninsula. So move them to Egypt, move them into Jordan, right? Move them into these other Arab countries. There's a lot of Arab countries, move them to all these other Arab nations. That's what we hear a lot, right? Okay, so you move them. So then what? Now you've got hostile neighbors still on your borders, right? I mean, they're still there. And they're still hostile towards you. They're even more angry because now they've really been pushed out and it's actual ethnic cleansing of your land. And now we can point to that and say that's really legitimately what it is. So now you've got a hostile Jordan. You've got a hostile Egypt. You've got a hostile Syria already and a hostile Lebanon right there. What is then the plan at that point? Then do you say, well, we've got to go after, which we're already seeing, Syria and Lebanon in order to stabilize, with the intention to stabilize those countries in order to make Israel safe. So then do we have to go into a war, boots on the ground, full bore against Hezbollah, against Assad? At that point, Turkey is definitely, that would put Turkey in a very precarious situation. And that might be the turning point for Turkey because they're worried about Syria, their border with Syria. They're worried about the Kurds. And their whole number one goal is going to be securing their own border. They don't care. They're not going to, they would absolutely exit NATO if it meant, look, if the choice is between securing our border or being in NATO, we choose securing our border. I mean, that's how Turkey, that's how really any country should think, but that's how Turkey thinks, right? So this would really cause, so that's the big question I have is what is Israel's, okay, so you get rid of this one group, let's say one way or another, you figure it out and you're able to figure that situation out with the Palestinians and Hamas and the ideology of they want to get rid of Jews that you think they have. I don't think that's true, maybe of Hamas, but Palestinian people. What then do you do about Lebanon? What do you do about Syria? What do you do about the Sinai Peninsula, which is right there on your border at that point?
Yeah. Well, I mean, really all it's doing is it's pushing the problem 50 or 100 miles away. I mean, that's not enough distance. You're still going to have, assuming that Hamas is actually I mean, let's just be honest. You're not going to wipe out Hamas. Like,
right. It's an ideology.
It's an ideology, but it's also an insurgency that exists amongst a largely civilian population of all people that are related to many of these people, that if you kill them, they're going to be radicalized into that same worldview, and they're going to come after you. I mean, this is the exact same framework that we utilized in the war on terror. We killed indiscriminately, and then we created more terrorism and terrorists, because everyone is now absolutely furious, and righteously so. You've wiped out innocent people needlessly. So you're not going to be able to wipe this out. The only thing you can do to actually wipe it out is genocide. And if that's what you're calling for, well, then I oppose you to the very core of my being. And I don't know why we're not talking about this openly. Like, yeah, if you want to wipe out that entire ideology, you're going to have to wipe out 2 million innocent people. Like, are you prepared to do that? And I think a lot of them are. And that's what gives me tremendous concern, because I can't even believe that people are talking like, finish them, end them, flatten them, glass them. You know, I've just heard this for weeks now. It's like people have lost their minds.
Now, many of you are worried about the economy. Many of you are worried about the value of the dollar and what in the world is going to be happening in the future, especially as we seem to be looming, or I should say really heading full force into what looks like World War III. So a lot of people are worried about the dollar and the value of it. And the fact is there's one asset that has withstood economic upheaval and has a history of being incredibly stable, and that is gold. So if you want to diversify your accounts, get yourself into gold, variety of ways you can do this, and the great people at Birch Gold can help you do this. If you go to birchgold.com/Kim, you'll get a free info kit. An expert will reach out to you and walk you through what is best for you, the best way for you to get diversified into this, into other things other than, the dollar. So maybe you want to move your existing 401k or IRA into a 401k in precious metals, or maybe you want actual physical gold. That's my preferred way, that maybe you keep in a home safe or you keep in a safety deposit box or something. But gold is a great way to get diversified. So just visit birchgold.com/Kim for your free info kit. And they're going to hold your hand through the whole process. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, thousands of happy customers. Again, that is birchgold.com/Kim to get your free info kit.